It was a cold October evening in 1972. My old Studebaker was running just fine back then. You remember the Studebakers, don't you? I had a 1954 Commander. Quite a car. When I say it was running fine, what I should have said is it was running, which was fine, because usually it really wasn't. You see, I had, well, to begin with, the ignition. The ignition hadn't worked since I got it. And except for these two wires down underneath the dash, the thing wouldn't move. But I got it working. On those cold October nights in Minnesota, it was especially tough because with no frosters, you couldn't see out the windows. But I didn't have much money back in those days, so there wasn't much I could do about it. Well, the thing is, I didn't have a job. I'll be honest with you. I didn't have a job. I hadn't found my gift in life. In fact, I hadn't even found my path. But I did find a road. It was this same road I traveled every evening, up the hill toward this big old country club, high on a hill. Magnificent place, really. It looked like a miniature White House. And as you got up to the top of the hill, there was a fork in the road, and you could go to your right. And if you went to the right, you drove up around the portico, by the porte cochere where the valets were waiting, and they would scurry for your Cadillac or Mercedes and park it for you. Those were the members. I, on the other hand, I always took the fork to the left, up around the back of this country club, back where the staff entrance was. And on this particular October night, for some reason, and I don't know what to call it, serendipity, kismet, I parked in a place I hadn't parked before. And as I sat there, listening to the radio, scraping the frost off the windshield, I happened to gaze up into the back of the building there where that round window was. The round window right above the stoves. This night, however, there was a face in that window. And it was a round face, just about the size of the window, smiling down on me. His face had little twinkly eyes and a crooked smile, a very bald head. And I was drawn to it until, well, what was that? Was that a wave? Was that a wave, or was he merely scratching the side of his face? I wasn't sure. So to be polite, I thought I had better wave because I'm the only one in the parking lot. Hi. Well, I wasn't sure he'd seen it because if he had, he certainly wouldn't wave back a second time, would he? I mean, strangers don't wave like that to one another all the time. But no, he did. This man up there in the window, that was a real wave. I know it. And so I waved for my second time. And when that drew a third wave from this man, I realized that, well, first of all, let's just call him the waver, shall we? The waver up there. I realized that he was either unfamiliar with etiquette, or he was crazy, or he was both. So I turned away, I looked out the window, and I listened to the music, and sooner or later, my wife came down with her waitress uniform over her arm, and we got in the car, and off we went into the night. And I didn't think about that waver again, really, until the staff Christmas party. Late in December, you see, once a year, this wealthy country club turns the place over to the staff. And so on this one night of the year, as we drove up that long winding hill in the Studebaker, I turned right. I turned right, drove up, down, around the portico there, and the valets came running out for my car, my Studebaker. And as the valet put his hand out for the key, I had to say, well, there's these two wires. But in we went, us in our finery, me in a ratty old coat and my very best pair of blue jeans. And greeting us was a string quartet and waiters in tuxedos with hors d'oeuvres on silver trays and all the free champagne you could drink. It was an evening of wonderful pretense, really, wasn't it? I mean, here we were, pretending like we were the wealthy members of society. I didn't feel real comfortable there, and it wasn't because I didn't have a job. No, it was really the fact that these were my wife's friends and coworkers, and I felt very much alone standing there with my 2 glasses of champagne. And it was then that I saw across the room, staring back at me, a face that looked quite familiar. But no, it couldn't be, I decided. It couldn't be the waiver because, did I tell you the waiver was completely bald? But this fellow in the back, the one that looked so much like the waiver, had a full head of black hair. Very thick black hair. Well, I waltzed around the room a couple of times, and each time I looked at him, his eyes seemed to be following me. Our eyes met momentarily, and I thought I saw that hand go up. It had to be the waiver, I said, and emboldened by this champagne, I walked right up to him. And as I got closer, I could see him almost rising out of his seat in anticipation, this meeting. But what about the hair? I didn't understand it. And as I got right up to him, he waved in my face, and with the hand that wasn't waving, well, he took off his wig. And he said, "Hi, buddy. My name's Bill. Bill for short." His name was Bill. Bill for short. And for the next several hours, and too many glasses of free champagne, we sat and talked. Well, mostly I talked. I told him I was just out of college. I'd just come home. I was just married. I was looking for a job, which he sympathized with. I was a musician. I was a photographer. I sold encyclopedias. I could do a lot of things, and I was just starting off in life, looking for my gift, looking for my path. And he said, "You know, I just come home too, because I've been gone like you, old Bill. Put it there, buddy." And we shook hands, and we talked on, and I realized the more we talked, the more confusing it was about certain, facts about this man, Bill for short. I mean, start with the fact that he couldn't seem to remember his last name. Or if he did, he was playing games with me. I mean, what kind of name is Bill for short? Secondly, he was very, very vague about all of this business about where he'd been and just come home. He seemed to be just most interested in sitting and soaking me up and making me laugh. And that he did. No, it was really weeks, months, years even, before I finally pieced this puzzle all together. One day Bill for short took me to this place that he had been. They had a file there. We looked at it. Inside there were a couple of things I was able to copy. This thing is dated May 25th, 1939, and it says, "Regarding William Sackter, number 4794. The enclosed copies of correspondence speak for themselves. William Sackter was born April 13th, 1913, and was committed as feeble-minded in this county November 6th, 1920. The intelligence quotient secured before he entered was 47. As far as our file is concerned, there has been no contact from the family since December 7th, 1921. Certainly, if any persons are interested in helping this boy, it is very fine, and I hope a plan can be worked out from the Department for Feeble-Minded and Epileptic." Well, that gave me my first clue. You see, Bill was feeble-minded, according to this. But there's so much more history that the files couldn't tell me, and certainly Bill couldn't. Let's start with the fact that, his parents, Sam and Mary, came to this country from Russia around the turn of the century. They opened a little corner grocery store. They sold food and staples. They learned whatever English they could learn, and they had 3 children. Bill had 2 older sisters, and they were doing fine in school. In fact, they were excelling. Bright kids they were. Bill had just started kindergarten, though, when his father died of a massive heart attack, leaving a widow and 3 small children, a grocery store that didn't make much money. Times were tough. Living was tough. And Bill was having a tough time in school. In fact, such a tough time that the teacher he had, this kindergarten teacher, sent him home one day with a note pinned to his lapel. It said, Bill isn't really ready for school. She meant it. But Mary, Bill's mother, didn't understand. What does that mean? And so she went out and bought Bill new trousers, gave him a haircut, sent him back to school. And he was returned again and again. And one day the principal wrote a very official-looking note. And he said that Bill was not ready for school, and in fact Bill would probably never be ready for school. Now, this was followed by a visit from a social worker. A woman who came to the grocery store one day and sat down with Mary and tried to explain to her that kids like Bill, they need special care, special surroundings, away from the prying eyes of society that looks so disfavorably upon them. Now, Bill needed a place where he could be secure and safe, where his needs would be taken care of, where he would be accepted. Mary never did agree that her son was feeble-minded. She refused to sign that part. But she did sign the important part that allowed that social worker to come back on the next visit and take in one hand a young boy's suitcase and in the other hand a young boy. They boarded a train and rode it for about an hour and a half to Fairbault, Minnesota. Hour and a half out of the city, past beautiful countryside, very lovely and rolling. And, I think back and I try to imagine Bill on that train, making that ride. And I bet he was just excited as could be. I mean, this was an adventure. This was a real odyssey. And to be the focus of all this attention, going to see someplace special. They entered those big wrought iron gates and walked up to the brick building up in the hill. And I wonder if Bill bothered to glance back. I wonder if he had looked over his shoulder, would he have realized that he was never going to see his family again? 44 years. That's how long he was there. The years, they did pass in a blur. At least, Bill doesn't have a lot of recollections from them. I asked him once, Bill, what was it like, really like? And he said, with all seriousness, buddy, I was there so many years, I didn't even know I was there. I didn't even know I was there. He did have one job that he got that he really, really loved. And that was working in the nursery. He told me that his job was to take care of the little babies, the hydrocephalics, or waterheads, as he called them. He learned to hold them just so their heads wouldn't go too far back, and so that they could look into his face. And he said, you know what, buddy? The little ones, they really like Bill. That's the best job a man ever had, having kids. Well, Bill still dreamed his dream of freedom, but it would take another 25 years for that to come true. But then came the 1960s, and with it, the concept of de-institutionalization, the law of the land. Bill, for instance, found himself in a boarding home in Minneapolis. Well, I wasn't there the day he got out, so I'm not going to try and tell you what he said or did. Imagine, though, the feeling of walking out of those gates. But imagine, too, the feeling of realizing when you walked up the steps of your new boarding house that all the guys in there were the same guys from the institution. As Bill said, things didn't change at all, buddy. The more they change, the more they stay the same. It's true. No, what Bill wanted was to get out into the world. I mean, the real world, not this make-believe world that was sort of halfway there and more than halfway not. He got a job, however. He got a job in a sheltered workshop, as they're called. And his job, Bill's, was to strip the finish and paint off these old soda pop crates and then repaint them with this bright lacquer yellow. Well, Bill did this for a couple of years, and I'm sure he was good at it. He says he was, and Bill's a hard worker. But you know what? After you've done about 10,000 of these soda pop crates, it gets boring, buddy. It gets really boring. And I believed it. You know, they really only made one mistake when they gave Bill that job. They put his workstation right in front of a window that looked out into the street. Now, Bill could see life passing him by, both literally and figuratively, and he didn't like it. He tried not to look. He tried not to remember those 7-year-old memories of what it was like to walk the streets and talk to people and pet dogs and all the stuff we take for granted. And one day, Bill just put that paintbrush down, walked out of that sheltered workshop, and never looked back. Of course, the social worker, she wasn't very pleased. She was not very pleased because Bill had a responsibility to society, to work, and to fix soda pop cases. We needed those. No, but there were other things too. I mean, she had some legitimate concerns. I wish she hadn't put it the way she did, however. That was, Bill, you either get back to work or you go back to the institution. It really wasn't fair, but Bill said, well, look, I'll do whatever you say. I ain't going back. So give me the soda pop cases. Give me 1 million of them. I'll paint them forever. Fortunately, they didn't want him back at the sheltered workshop. Once you get that wanderlust, no curing it. No, they had to find Bill a new job. And the social worker said, Bill, I'm giving you one last chance. You're going to have to learn how to scrub pots and pans. But I think you're going to like this new job. It's in a really nice, fancy country club, high up on a hill. Well, let's get back to this morning after that Christmas party, the one where I met Bill and I had too much champagne. The problem with having too much champagne, aside from the little headache you get, is the fact that you don't remember the promises you made the night before. And I was about to be rudely reminded of the promises I had made when at 6 o'clock the next morning the phone rang. Now, I was in the habit, being a musician, among other things, of getting up at a more reasonable time, say 2 in the afternoon. So 6 o'clock, I didn't know what was going on, and by the way, it wasn't Bill. It wasn't Bill who had called. It was a woman who identified herself as the dialer. Now, you see, Bill could not read, nor write, nor dial a telephone, among his other limitations. But he had a gift for getting other people to do those things for him. And so this woman named the dialer dialed my number and reminded me of my promise, which was to pick Bill up that morning. She said, you were supposed to be here at 5 o'clock, and he's been waiting for you for an hour. Oh, I said, lady, I mean, it's going to take me a couple of hours to wake up, have some coffee, and especially get that Studebaker running. Tell you what, I'll see him at 10. She said, no, it's not going to do, Mr. Morrow, because first of all, he's been waiting for an hour. It's 10 degrees above zero outside, and it's been snowing since the middle of last night. Oh, I said, I'll be right over. I got in the Studebaker, I zoomed right over. No, I didn't. I got in the Studebaker, I spent 15 minutes, and then I zoomed right over there. And I drove up around to the back, up to the parking lot area, where there is this sort of barracks. It's where some of the staff people, like Bill, the custodial staff and others, have little rooms. And I went out there and I honked, and I didn't see anything, and then I rolled down the window and I yelled, Bill! Bill for short! And then the damnedest thing happened. The stairs moved. Well, I mean, not the whole stairs, but a part of the stairs moved. The part where Bill was sitting, and I couldn't see him because he was covered with snow. But he got up and he brushed himself off, kind of like an old bear coming out of hibernation. Made a beeline right for my car and jumped in, and I said, Bill, don't slam that. Too late. Handle came off. Studebaker was falling apart just as our friendship was beginning to be built. Well, what did we do that day? I don't really remember. I think we had coffee. We did some errands, some laundry. Not a very eventful first date. But a couple things happened. Not the least of which was I saw for the first time how mesmerized Bill was by the simple, everyday events passing by our car window. School children crossing the street, a store opening, a store coming down, a new movie coming to town, being put up on the marquee. Oh, everything was just great, buddy. Wasn't it great? There's nice people, a good day. I said, Bill, it's cold, it's snowing. It's a nice day, it's snowing. There's a good life. And he started to inject me with his optimism. And so basically what I'm saying is it was easy to be with Bill. Before the day was over, I thought, well, Bill, I want to know a little bit more about that place that you don't like to talk about. I'm just curious, you don't have to talk about it. He said, well, I just want to do this. I want to show you something. Okay? This is, just look that way. And he fished down in his pocket, and he came up with something. He says, that's my lucky piece. It's my lucky piece. I had this years ago back in that place. That's what got me out. I said, well, let me see that. I said, that's a $2 bill, isn't it? He said, yeah. I said, well, Bill, why? I mean, it's old, and I guess it feels lucky, but why is it lucky? Bill looked at me like I had just landed from Mars, and he said, well, who's that right there? I said, well, that's Thomas Jefferson. He says, right. He says, you know what Thomas Jefferson's birthday is? I said, I haven't a clue. This is April 13th, just like old Bill. He says, that's a lucky piece. That stays with me, buddy. He said, oh, I forgot to tell you of one other secret. I said, what? Hold on. He fished in his pocket, and he came up with this. He said, I bet you didn't know I was a musician, too. I said, Bill, you play that well. He says, oh, I got a little talent. He also, though, had to tell me that day his philosophy of life. I wasn't going to just let Bill get off talking about the weather and how great everything was. I knew by this time he'd lived a tough life, and I wanted to know how he got through it. And I said, Bill, dig deep here. What do you believe? He says, well, I believe in being a regular good man. I said, well, that's fine. What does that mean exactly, a regular good man? He says, well, you be a regular good man, you have to have a regular good home, and a regular good man have to have a good job, and a good buddy. And that, he said, very pointedly in my direction. You needed 3 things in life: a good home, a good job, and a good buddy. That made you a regular good man. Now, he did add something to that list a little bit later, and that was hair. A regular good man also has to have hair, which I had plenty of then, believe me. And Bill didn't have much at all, this little fringe around the side, but he wore this wig, remember? This god-awful wig. It was a Beatles wig. He'd bought it at Woolworth's several years earlier, whenever the Beatles were big, and he kept it in his room when he wasn't wearing it on special occasions. And he asked me if I would like to see the wig. I said, well, I've seen it, but sure, what the hell, let's go. So we drove over to the little barracks where Bill lived, walked up the steps there, and inside I saw his room for the first time. It was a little tiny thing with a little bed, single bed, a nightstand, a dresser, and a closet. Very Spartan. But on the dresser was a styrofoam wig head. And on the wig head stand was the wig, surrounded by the photographs that Bill had clipped out of the newspapers and magazines. Photographs of all the wonderful things in life. Smiling children, happy dogs, homemade pies, men with hair. It was this kind of a shrine, is what I'm trying to explain. And I said, so when do services begin? And Bill says, no, I'm going to show you now. I'm going to show you how to do it. And he went over to his cabinet in a little closet, and he opened it up. And he kind of kept it hidden from me as if I wasn't supposed to see inside, but I peeked. I peeked and I saw as he took out this big can of hairspray that there were hundreds of cans of hairspray in that closet. And he said, now I'm going to show you how to do the wig. And he marched over to that wig and he straightened it just so. And he took off the top of this hairspray and he proceeded to empty the contents of the entire can onto this wig. Try it sometimes. It takes about 15 minutes. The air was so thick I could barely breathe. And this was no ordinary hairspray either. Women in the audience, you'll understand what I'm saying. This was Aquanet. That wig was lacquered so thoroughly that it looked like a bowling ball. And in fact, it wasn't that many months later that Bill told me about a tragedy that befell him. The wig got so many coats of lacquer on it, it got top heavy, fell off the wig stand onto the floor and cracked down the middle. He glued it back together with, you know what, more hairspray. Well, you know, despite all of this, we were getting to be buddies. He was right. You do need a good buddy. And like I said, it was easy to be with Bill. I mean, why not have Bill go along? Bill made me feel better. Bill made me laugh. Bill played the harmonica. Bill had a lucky piece. I didn't. So, before too long, Bill became kind of woven into the fabric of my life. But then something really kind of awful happened. I mean, from Bill's point of view, not from mine. From mine, it was like one of the greatest things that ever happened to me. The birth of my son, Clay. All Bill knew was that he was being left out. I hate to admit this to you, but it was probably a week after Clay was born that I finally got over to Bill's place and all excited with cigars in my pockets, ran up the steps and knocked on the door and said, "Bill, it's me, open up." Now, Bill hardly ever locked his door. And I heard inside the sound of his little TV, his little black and white TV playing I Dream of Jeannie. And he says, "Who is it?" I said, "Bill, who is it?" "It's me, it's Barry. Open up, I got some great news for you." Well, he cracked the door a little bit. He says, "What is it?" I said, "Look, I'm sorry, I know I haven't been around, I've been really busy. I've been busy having a baby." Well, not me personally, but I mean, Bev's had a baby, and I'm a dad, and here's a cigar, and you're a grandfather. What do you think of that? "Does he have any hair?" And I said, "Not much. I'll go." Well, we got to the house, and I'll never forget the funny thing that happened. I mean, first, here's Bill in the doorway, right? Sort of frozen, tense, staring across the room at this object of his disgust. But then, here's the thing. Then when he got to the crib and looked down, I could see something come over him. All his muscles just kind of relaxed. He got all soft and kind of gooey as he went down to reach for Clay. Bev and I looked at each other and we thought, you know, because we were just learning how to hold babies ourselves. And we said, "Well, Bill," he said, no, leave old Bill do it. I know how to do it." And expertly and tenderly, he picked up Clay and held him and rocked him. And he said, "What you got to do, buddy, is you got to look into them eyes. Let them see you." He says, "They can't see right away, but they learn to see. And then when they learn to see you, they love you." And then he put him back into the crib. And it wasn't until the next morning that I found the gift that he had left on the bedstand right beside the crib. It was kind of hidden there behind the baby powder. This little harmonica.